To South Carolina now, where two Republican members of Congress are fighting to keep their jobs in primaries after daring to speak out against former President Trump. Congresswoman Nancy Mace sharply criticized Trump in the wake of the January 6th insurrection. Congressman Tom Rice went so far as to vote to impeach Trump. The former president is now seeking revenge by backing both of their Republican challengers in Tuesday's primary races. CNN's Jeff Zeleny joins us now live from Charleston, South Carolina. Jeff, you were with Congresswoman Mace while she was campaigning this weekend. How does she seem? Is she worried?
Well, Jake, there's no doubt that she knows she's in a tough competition here, certainly given the environment. Certainly the January 6th hearing have revived all of the feelings of January 6th. So among Republicans, that could certainly play a couple different ways. But she does also believe that she has the argument that she won this district and she won it back from Democratic hands. So she believes she has a narrow upper hand. But Jake, when we asked her if she has any regrets over certifying that election in 2020, she said no, but she did not mention Trump in her answer.
Well, I'm a constitutional conservative, and I voted with folks like Rand Paul and Mike Lee and Senator Tim Scott to preserve the Constitution, because what we couldn't do is allow one person, the Vice President of the United States, to single-handedly overturn the Electoral College or the results of a presidential election, because then you're setting the precedent that Kamala Harris can do that in 2024.
So calling herself a constitutional conservative, Jake, also she was campaigning at the side of Nikki Haley, of course, a former popular governor from here, who is a member of President Trump's cabinet.
And you spoke today with Congressman Tom Rice, who's fighting off a challenge from the MAGA right. How has his vote to impeach President Trump played a role in his campaign?
Look, Jake, he is one of 10 Republicans in the House who voted to impeach. Most are not running again. His district is just a bit north here in Charleston. We caught up with him. Most voters wanted to talk about inflation, but one voter said he congratulated him for doing the brave decision for casting that impeachment vote. I asked the congressman about that vote that still hangs over his head.
I don't think it will cost me my election. Certainly my hope that it doesn't, but if doing the right thing costs me an election, then I'll wear it like a badge.
So he calls it a badge of honor, Jake. He is in a much more competitive race than Nancy Mace is. He's running against a state representative named Russell Fry, also backed by former President Trump. That race is likely to go into a runoff in Election Day here tomorrow in South Carolina. Jake.
All right, Jeff Zeleny reporting live from Charleston, South Carolina. Thanks so much. Let's discuss with my panel. David Urban, let me start with you. There are a lot of Republicans getting primaried by people in the MAGA right who say that, they're not loyal enough to Donald Trump. And, you see Congressman Rice directly defied Trump. How far is Trump willing to go to get these non-loyal Republicans, who might be great lawmakers, out of the party?
Well, he's willing to go all the way, right? And so you may end up losing the seat, right? And that's the part that Republicans have to understand, right? Nancy Mace is in I think she's an R+1 district or a D+2 district, right?
The woman that's challenging her lost the seat to a Democrat.
Right. I mean, so these are incredibly, these are incredibly tough races. This is, the Brian Fitzpatrick seat in Lower Bucks in Pennsylvania. These seats, if they're not held by these people, are going to end up flipping to be Democratic seats. And so if the Republicans in their zeal for being, MAGA first above all, want to run that direction, we're going to run right off a cliff.
Yeah. Nia Malika Henderson, this weekend you heard former South Carolina Governor and UN Ambassador Nikki Haley stumping for Nancy Mace in her home state. I want you to listen to this moment from the campaigning.
Tuesday is election day, and I love election days, especially when I'm not in it. Thank you, and God bless.
Some cheers there for President Haley, and she is somebody that some Republicans hope runs for president in 2024.
Yeah, and listen, she is not only active in this campaign in South Carolina, she's been in New Hampshire, she's been in Iowa. She is this unique politician. She at one point was one of the most popular politicians in the country, had an approval rating of 63%, and it's because she really was able to thread this line of being in Trump's world, but not a Trumpist, and you saw some of that after January 6th. She said that Donald Trump never had a future in politics, that he'd fallen so far in terms of his legacy and history to judge him harshly. She then regretted that and tried to go down to Mar-a-Lago, and Donald Trump said absolutely not. And then she said that she wouldn't run in 2024 if Donald Trump ran. I think some possible 2024 Republicans are looking at this week, right? All of the hearings to see, well, listen, how strong is Donald Trump going forward in 2024? Could you, if you're Nikki Haley, credibly make a run for the White House? I think, again, her problem is, what is her lane, right? Is she the evangelical choice? Is she sort of the Chamber of Commerce choice? She's not really a Trumpist. She's not in office in the way that somebody like Ron DeSantis is or Greg Abbott, who have kind of stronger cases to make to that Trump brand. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in 2024.
I'll go farther than that. I'll say a bunch of Republicans who are thinking about running for president in 2024 are hoping that it's devastating for Donald Trump. I think that there are a bunch of them who want it to be as bad as possible for Donald Trump.
I think so, because they need him out of the way if they're going to have their own political future. I mean, he has tied them up in knots over and over again, and that's why I think what you showed there with Nikki Haley on stage with Nancy Mace. I mean, the invisible primary always starts early. It's already going on, and the subtext of all of these candidates trying to figure out a way to pressure Donald Trump to go against Donald Trump without actually saying that that's what they're doing. I mean, she's standing on a stage next to a candidate that he's trying to take out, right? It's a direct confrontation to the former president. But as Neil was outlining, I mean, it's a tricky place for anyone to be right now. And so I think, to your point, if these hearings this week are what ultimately takes Trump out of the party, I mean, I remember after January 6th, obviously it was a devastating day, but there were a lot of Republicans who were pretty eager to take an opportunity to rid their party of Donald Trump, right? Then they realized, oh, wait, they had to turn around real quick and fix that after they realized it wasn't the death blow they thought it would be.